There's been a lot of talk recently about engaging with a political opponent, the example usually being the extreme alt-right. Now, of course, I use the alt-right and neo-Nazi quite synonymously, and you might have issue with that. I don't, and that's your problem. The idea is that we have to discuss these political ideas, because if we don't, they will remain uncontested in the marketplace of ideas, and that there they will have the potential to grow. Like a larva, growing, disgusting, vile. Another idea is that we have to debate the alt-right, because we can reach out to their audience and maybe convert a few people. Of course, the opposite is also true. They get access to our audiences.
You're alone and you're scared, but the banquet's all prepared.
However, the goal of debate is very different depending on who you ask, and it's very different person to person. And this is especially true when dealing with the alt-right. To the alt-right, the goal is seldom to actually win political debates. Instead, it's rather to have political debates in the first place. Usually there are two sides and some form of middle ground.
Tell us about the lobster.
Any middle ground between a reasonable person and a neo-Nazi is a middle ground that's very dangerous to the people that neo-Nazis want to harm in the first place. That, of course, is their ultimate goal. The specifics of the debate doesn't really matter. The fact that the political debate is happening at all is enough to cause harm to the people that neo-Nazis want harmed in the first place. Shifting the debate in this way that the middle ground will always be further right is called gaming the meta-politics. It's a very common tactic among neo-Nazis, where the goal is to shift the political climate so much that a center, more balanced view is still one that is very extreme and to the right. The goal is not to win debates, it's to have debates. And this is very obvious considering how much they keep talking about free speech here and there. Of course, in most cases, they don't really understand what free speech means in the first place. No one has to debate you. No one has to talk to you. You can say whatever you want, but no one has to actually respond to you. And I mean, there's a reason that they never actually want to have a formal debate with rules, an established framework, and a moderator.
You're alone and you're scared.
They only want to use informal debates as platforms to spread neo-Nazi propaganda.
You're alone.
If we discuss these propaganda points instead of dismissing them for what they are, they can run the risk of being seen as valid debate points instead of absurdity propaganda, which they are. If your platform does not have established rules or a framework, don't risk hosting a neo-Nazi on that platform, because they can bend whatever rules that do exist into just allowing them into having a platform to spread bile. This sounds very much like common sense, but when I look at YouTube, what I see is instead a lot of personalities reaching out to the alt-right, trying to debate them and win debates, instead of dismissing them as the absurdity that they are. The results of this can already be seen. Jordan Peters, for example, sounds like an insecure teenage boy talking about how women and men can't coexist in the workplace, or his weird ideas about makeup where he thinks that red lips signify sexual desire. And what about the shell, Jordan? What does the red shell signify? He has the analytical depth of a teaspoon and the philosophical worldview of a rock. He is not to be debated. His views are absurd, and we should see them like that. The fact that he himself and many others see him as a middle ground between reasonable people and the alt-right means that the alt-right have already succeeded in shifting the political climate. Jordan Peterson's views are extremist, and that's not really hard to see. However, compared to the alt-right neo-Nazis, he seems like a reasonable person, but he is not. Looking at his arguments for even a fraction of a second, you can see that the arguments should be dismissed, not debated. Not talking to political opponents is called deplatforming, simply meaning that you don't give those people a platform to talk. This is something Andy Worski should look into, before his channel becomes a neo-Nazi propaganda channel. Oh wait.
You're alone and you're scared.
However, a common response to deplatforming is, how do we actually debate these ideas? And how do we counter them? The ideas that the alt-right represents are dangerous, harmful, and build on a world without empathy. There is value to be gained from debating Nazis face to face, but the risk is enormous. If you have a big audience and the Nazi is marginalized, that Nazi only gains access to your audience via such a debate. Which means that they have a new audience to spread their propaganda to, and there's a risk that some of your audience might be converted to their cause. Paradoxically, the more successful you are, the more risk is involved in debating the alt-right. While I think it's a noble goal to reach out to the alt-right in the hopes of converting people, I think it's arrogant to think that only their side is susceptible to that. Our own side isn't perfect either, and their propaganda can be very effective at times. We shouldn't let their ideas have a foothold in our communities, in the same spaces that we use to debate them. But how do you counter these ideas? They are harmful and dangerous, so you need to counter them. You can't just ignore them. But how do you do it if not face to face? Well, like I just did. I don't have to talk to Jordan Peterson to tell you that Jordan Peterson is a fucking moron. It all ties back into controlling the narrative, which the alt-right has become masters at. We on the left, however, seem to be scared from controlling the narrative, in fears of seeming authoritarian or something. However, we need to control the narrative, because any narrative that directly involves a Nazi being able to spread propaganda is a narrative that a Nazi has won. Taking control of the narrative allows you to logically present an argument in order for you to deconstruct it, which I think needs to happen a lot more. You don't need to talk to a Nazi to prove their points wrong. You just have to present the point and then prove it wrong. You don't need them to do that. While this can be used against anyone, I think it's very important to use it specifically against the extreme right, just because they are the extreme. My point in all this? Don't talk to Nazis. Just don't do it. And this only works if we all hold to this. We can't ignore them, they're obviously dangerous. Let's not appease them and pretending that their arguments can actually be won logically, because their arguments are illogical in nature. If we keep doing that, we keep appeasing them. And appeasing a Nazi will work in the short term, but historically, it hasn't really worked out. Thank you for watching this video. If you like my content, I suggest that you subscribe to my channel. Maybe hit the bell, leave a like, maybe leave a comment. I usually answer most of them, depends on the comment, I guess. I also want to give special thanks to Ibrahim Aldridge for supporting me on Patreon. It really means a lot, so thanks for that.